In Chatelet, my dudes, and welcome to Polecat Cast number 117, CNN, Lies, and the Ghost of Gamergate, where our stealthy polecats ferret out the best feels, funnies, and what the fucks to discuss Slam Bam Badger style. Strap yourselves in, lock up the bleach, and make sure only pills that you plan on overdosing on are the red ones. Welcome to the dankest timeline. Today's Polecat panel consists of the big half of Big and Robot, Scott, the silverback self-aware simian, Polecat Punster, and Pussycat Punisher, Hannah. It's Pussycat Punisher, Max, just so you know. Dr. Ranimer Cam, Panda, Puppet Master, and long-range rhetorician, and me, your host, the Supreme Doge in charge, with his trusty sidekick, the Lone Gunman, the Highlander, Neo, Romulus, Han Solo, the Uniballer, his one loyal testicle. Today we will be discussing the following topics, coming in like the Wrecking Ball. That's another testicle reference. In the wake... Go ahead and get on.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's all right.
I'm this many. Can you tell?
These are my. It's all right. Okay. I'm just busting my ball. All right. So today we will be discussing the following topics, coming in like the Wrecking Ball. In the wake of literal communist mobs tweeting selfies on iPhones while burning down and destroying businesses in Hamburg in efforts to fight the evils of capitalism, am I right? CNN deals with a far more dangerous foe, a retweeted wrestling meme. The worst part, Engadget seems to have cracked the case, as they have invoked the ghost of Gamergate past as the real culprit.
Because reasons, why not?
Right? Because, yes. While we're on the subject of toxic video game culture, an opinion piece by Kyle Smith of the New York Compost attempts to examine and correlate the rise of video game industry to men's failure to launch, as he claims we are losing men to video games. They're falling into the black hole of video gamedom. I'll bet my left nut, which is all I have right now, he hasn't actually considered all the factors. We're
not gonna ever get through this, are we?
No.
Rolling right along.
Rolling right along, that's right. In Nantes, France, a bus company has a strange dress code rule for forbidding employees from wearing shorts. And this summer in Nantes, it grows hot, as temperatures go well into the 90s. So what do the male bus drivers do? Well, let's just say that manspreading might not be recommended if you're the demure type of man.
Oh my.
Despite the last two seasons being pretty on the nose when it came to cultural and political commentary, this next season of Southpark is looking like it won't be. According to Trey Parker, it would be boring to talk about the current administration. It's almost as if we already have people whose job it is to beat the dead horse for the next 4 years, and the idea of joining in isn't interesting to Trey. It's alright, man. You can bust my ball if you want to. And finally, our bonus story for the patron-only after show. The beacon of truth and integrity, known as The Guardian, has recently discovered that women aren't the only people who have a biological clock that's chipping away at their fertility. They just decided to look at the situation for men and apparently found that men also have declining fertility as they get older. Who'd have fucking thunk it? That would be something worthy of note, except that we've known that for many years now, and it's not quite the same as women's anyway. But nice try on that gotcha, Barbara Ellen. Looks like I'm gonna be still good to go, even though I'm at half my fuel cells. Anyway, if you would like to participate in our after shows either as an audience member or a participant, please consider becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/Honey Badger Radio. Now, before we get into the first show topic, I just want to say that normally, for those of you guys who are brand new to HBR, these shows are normally done live. Unfortunately, we have a terms of service strike on us that is preventing us from doing any live streaming. We will probably release some kind of video announcement in the future. That is something that Allison normally handles that will explain the situation further. But we are fighting against it right now, even though YouTube has not done much to accommodate us. So for those of you guys who are new, just know that normally these shows are live, and then what happens is a day later we release a sort of condensed version of the show, whereas the live version is still accessible through our Patreon links and so on. So this show is a bit different because it's not the way we normally handle things. So anyway, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the stories. I'm going to go ahead and let me see. Go ahead, Scott. I'm going to let you go first and tell us about Telling Lies with Engadget.
Gaming snot rag Engadget has thrown themselves between CNN and the hail of criticism they faced in response to threatening to release the private information of Redditor who created a GIF mocking CNN, which was later tweeted out by Donald Trump. President Donald Trump, Engadget writer Jessica Conant dredged up the tired harassment narrative falsely linked with Gamergate whilst attempting to exonerate CNN of all wrongdoing. Conant states that doxing, defined as the search for and publishing of private or identifying information about a particular individual on the internet, typically with malicious intent, was the main weapon of Gamergate. This is untrue of most of the doxing that surrounded Gamergate was perpetrated by third-party trolls, particularly the users of 8chan's Baphomet board. Conduit continues, calling Gamergate a loosely organized movement that led the widespread harassment of women in the video game community in 2014. However, despite this claim, this claim, gaming website TechRaptor, citing a peer-reviewed report from Women, Action, and the Media, states that less than 1% of Twitter accounts that were blocked using the GG auto-blocker were ever flagged for harassment. Condit also claims that Gamergate exclusively targeted female game developers such as Zoe Quinn, Brianna Wu, and Anita Sarkeesian. Again, that data doesn't seem to back this up in the slightest. If anything, it was unwittingly debunked by Newsweek's smear piece on Gamergate, where it was revealed by Brandwatch that the overwhelming majority of tweets sent to Quinn, Wu, and Sarkeesian were neutral in nature. Condit also brings up the 173-page FBI report on Gamergate, but can only cite the example of two teenage boys calling Brianna Wu 40 to 50 times a day. The worst of it, they called her 40 to 50 times a day. Holy shit. Okay, that's kind of annoying. Anyway, Condit wraps things up by recalling the doxing of Felicia Day after the actress wrote a blog post discussing Gamergate. While it true...
Discussing?
Okay. Yeah, discussing Gamergate.
Yeah.
Discussing Gamergate. Wait, yeah, this is about a discussion. Yeah, interesting. Comments disabled. Anyway, while it's true that the address of Felicia Day's talent agency was posted online after the blog went live, the doxing was the result of a third-party troll attempt to frame Gamergate figurehead Internet Aristocrat. In the end, Condit has nothing to show in the way of proof. The claims she made are the ones we've been hearing for about the last 3 years, and they're all false now as they were back in 2014. Shocking, I know, right?
All right.
Shocking revelations.
Yeah. They don't even spell doxing right. Isn't it with two X's?
I don't even know, man. I'm like,
I guess that's one of the internet's big debates.
Yeah,
like there's a very heated debate over it. In fact, somebody created a bot, which they gave an anti-Semitic name to, if I remember right. I've got it muted because every time you type dox, it tells you it's spelled the other way. And it retweets you to tell you that so that you'll be sure to see it in your notifications.
Yeah.
And then, well, I'm starting to get to the point where I don't get to see all my notifications. Twitter kind of lets me see so many, and then it just won't load anymore. But this thing is hilarious. This idea that if doxing is not what CNN did, that CNN did nothing wrong. Doxing might be the release of private information that isn't otherwise searchable on the internet, but the other thing that they did was put this person under reasonable fear of violence, considering the way the left, and it's mainly been the progressive left, has responded to people being disparaged by the news media, in particular, political representatives, but they're already engaging in violence at colleges, they're already engaging in violence in the streets and protests and so on. It would not be unreasonable at all for this guy to be afraid that if his personal information was published by CNN, that somebody would track him down and hurt him. I would be afraid if I was in that situation that was going to happen. And that's a violation of federal stalking law. Especially since their own news article made it very clear that their intent in doing this was to intimidate the guy into changing his behavior. So with intent to intimidate, they engaged in a course of action that placed a person in reasonable fear of death or serious bodily injury, and would be reasonably expected to cause substantial emotional distress. That fits. It fits the law. They've violated federal stalking law. Will they have any repercussions from it? Probably not. The guy's probably not going to press charges. Even if he did try to press charges, he may not be taken seriously simply because this is CNN. And they may even try to hide this behind an act of, or calling it an act of journalism. But the truth is, that's what they did. They violated a federal law. One that if that guy was female and the journalist in question was writing for a right-wing publication or for a games publication that was sympathetic to Gamergate, that person would be getting all the sympathy in the world. You know, instead, here we've got a guy being targeted by establishment media. No, he probably won't.
You know what's funny about this? In the article that you talked about briefly there, Hannah, is that they said CNN reserves the right to put this information out there as they see fit, basically. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, if anything changes
right,
or whatever.
Exactly,
right.
yeah. Paraphrasing. But the fact of the matter is this was very, very clear. To anybody with a brain, this was very clearly the kind of strong-arm tactics you see in movies, like where the mob comes in, it'd be a real shame if somebody was to find out about this, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Very, very clearly that. But they were vehemently against, no, that's not what we're doing at all. No. And it's just kind of, it just reinforces this idea that there are, they can commit a federal crime, like Hannah pointed out, and there are two sets of rules. It just doesn't apply to them. They can get away with it because they can hide behind this, oh no, it's freedom of the press. We gotta, it's all right to do this because we're a press outlet and we're it's kind of
right.
It's kind of disgusting, that they operate under the auspice that they can just pretty much do anything. Just, no, freedom of the press, freedom of the press, freedom of the press, and because I believe in freedom of the press. I think it's a very important right that we have. But
absolutely,
this is a gross, negligent, invoking of that, which it's just
inaccurate,
yes,
to say the least.
exactly.
Like to essentially, you don't have to overtly say, do as we ask, or else this is going to happen.
Right.
But that was basically what was being said.
Oh, absolutely.
Like essentially, when you say we have the info, but we're not going to release it because we're really nice like that. However, if something changes, hey, we can't promise that it's not just going to leak out.
We might not be so nice anymore.
Yeah, especially in a political climate where you literally can't even, like, if I left my house with a MAGA hat, if I just felt like doing that, okay, I may not come back home. I mean, this is how bad it is in places like, especially in cities like Chicago. And I know that sounds hyperbolic, but I think it's absolutely true.
Oh, no, it's not hyperbolic at all. We've seen videos of people that have been blatantly attacked for having a MAGA hat. Like people just sitting around and they've been attacked, like pepper sprayed and beaten.
So if you
absolutely.
out somebody, as like making a meme on the internet, and you basically you've already spent a great deal of time, which CNN did. I think they were doing like 24-hour fucking coverage of this wrestling meme, essentially crafting the narrative of how dangerous and how evil and how fucked up it was for this person to make this meme, even though that's a completely retarded argument. But if you keep on repeating a lie, then you can make it true. Right. And I think that there are a good number of people who would be sympathetic to CNN's ideas, and they would say, oh yeah, sure, somebody who made a meme like that is obviously a bully, and I've already been told a million times that it's okay to punch Nazis, and that looks like Nazi behavior because this dude on CNN said that it was like the kind of propaganda that Nazis used. There was literally a guy on CNN that said that, and I was like, oh shit, the Nazis had memes? I didn't know. They were putting up animated GIFs of back in the 30s. I didn't realize that, but I mean, this is the rhetoric, so you keep using it, and so of course that's the kind of climate you're going to get, and I'm not normally one to say that I think that words can hurt people. Obviously, I don't think I'm a free speech absolutist at the end of the day, right? I think that all of it should be okay, or none of it is okay. But I think that I wouldn't say that what CNN does it necessarily incites violence. They're not saying people please go hurt these people, but when you have spent a lot of time crafting the narrative, and then all you do is leak out the information, then you just wait and see if some nut job actually does something.
Right.
And so that's what I get from it. You know, it's like I would say I don't necessarily have a problem with CNN saying whatever they say, but I do have a problem with them lying and nobody calling them on it, or them obviously making veiled threats and no one's saying that's what that is.
But here's the thing,
or at least
though.
calling it what it is.
Here's the thing, though. There's already been a precedent set with this where we've seen this happen. We saw it very, very clearly when, Dr. George Killer was murdered. Or Dr. Killer. Tiller. Tiller the baby killer. You know, fucking Bill O'Reilly beat that drum for fucking months. And then the guy that actually found him and murdered Dr. Tiller said that he did it because, that was one of his motivations. So we have seen an instance, a very real instance of a, quote-unquote news organization who has beat this drum for a 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah,
and
propaganda is powerful.
It has had real-world implications. So there is a precedent. Yeah, there absolutely is a precedent for this.
I agree.
Well, and there's also a standard in journalism that CNN failed miserably with respect to this, and that's the public interest standard. There is nothing about finding out who created a meme that passes the public interest test. Right. And I mean, the public interest test is basically things like, if you're violating the privacy of even a public figure, you have to look at whether or not what you're writing about is going to have some significant impact on the public, or whether you're just publishing a salacious rumor or a juicy piece of information that's gossip. And that's what separates credible media from tabloid rags, is that they deal with this public interest test. This didn't lead to greater accountability for anybody. This didn't create transparency in the government or transparency in any administrative system anywhere. It didn't help people's understanding or participation in a debate. It didn't affect public welfare, public well-being. It didn't provide people with something to use to direct their own activities or their own interests. It didn't give people health information. It didn't correct a significant wrong. It did nothing but expose this guy to potential damages. And that kind of puts it not only in the area of stalking, it also puts them at risk for, even when you publish something that is true, but that's defamatory about a person, or you frame it in a way that's defamatory, you open yourself up to a defamation lawsuit. And this really, I would be worried if I was, CNN's legal department, because there is no public interest in this, and they did communicate something that subjected this guy to public ridicule and potential abuse. That if it comes out, they threatened him with the idea that if his information comes out, we've seen in the past people have lost their jobs over stuff like this. People have contacted people's employers. People have been attacked. This is something that, like I said, I'd be real worried if I worked at CNN, if I was involved in their legal end of things, or if I was an administrator. I'd be really looking at the guy that wrote this article going, maybe you should lay low for a while, not work for us again at all.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, didn't they actually kind of subcontract this out to BuzzFeed, like the muckrakers from BuzzFeed?
Yes. They were the ones that. So this is kind of
BuzzFeed writer Andrew Kaczynski.
Yeah. This is kind of gross that CNN, who's supposedly a reputable news organization, is subcontracting out to fucking BuzzFeed fucking
Yeah.
the listicles of the internet. They're fucking like
Yeah.
10 ways that girls like to have shoes, or shit like that, man. Come the fuck on.
Right.
What is this? Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, the BuzzFeed is so much cancer.
So
and I'm
much.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah.
So there's another thing too that I want to talk a little bit about. Jessica Condit's article, which is what this is about. Her article entitled "Here's Why CNN Isn't Doxing Anyone," which she wrote for Engadget, the Engadget article, the original one. She basically says that what CNN is doing is not doxing, and what doxing is what Gamergate did, and basically tries to make the case that these two things are completely different. Now, obviously, in our write-up, we clarified that Gamergate. It's really difficult to actually say that Gamergate was responsible for any doxing. There was no actual evidence that anyone that was actually really a supporter of the Gamergate hashtag did it, although we are looking at something that is simply a hashtag, and in order for you to be a participant in Gamergate, the only thing you needed to do was use the hashtag. So literally, you can't really like pin anyone on it, but at the same time, it's like difficult to say that Gamergate could either be guilty or innocent of that. But we do know that most of it came from Baphomet, and we know most of it came from teenage trolls that had no stake in the game and was just fucking with everybody, which is the nature of the internet. So she says in her article a couple things that I thought was kind of telling about what a doxing is. She says, doxing is all about control. In a doxing attempt, attackers hunt down and publish personal information about someone with the intent to cause harm, sharing items including addresses, phone numbers, places of employment, sexual orientation, age, social media accounts, and even family members' information. Generally, there's an appeal to dig up even more sensitive information and further harass the victim, calling dozens of times a day, sending items to their addresses, or actually showing up at their home. At its heart, doxing is an intimidation tactic meant to scare and silence someone. Generally someone the attacker disagrees with online. Now, aside from, so CNN is not calling this kid's house, or this guy. There was rumors that this person was a teenager, but those, I think, are not credible. It appears that he was a teenager in the 90s, which would make him about Scott and mine age. Yeah. So he's probably... Yeah, he's probably a grown-ass man. But he also, may be a man with a family, which means it doesn't necessarily... Like, first off, it doesn't make it okay. But what I'm saying is that he's not a teenage boy, in all likelihood. However, he may be a father with family and kids. So this doesn't make it okay regardless, because normally, if CNN were to publish this man's information... and it turned out that he had family and children, then all of those people could become targets.
Something to point out, the source of the claim that he is a teenager was an individual on 4chan that is the person that sort of let everybody know what was going on. The source of the information that he was not a teenager, if I remember right, is a screenshot from Reddit that was shared by the author of the article. Okay. So neither source is really credible. Right. What we can say definitively is that we don't know how old the guy is.
Right.
And the other thing is, with respect to your point about him being an adult and everything, you're right. One of the first things that happened when Gawker Media doxed Violent Acres was his employer received so many phone calls that even after telling him he wasn't going to lose his job because of this, they had to let him go because they couldn't afford to deal with the harassment that they got from his online opponents, from people that were calling them because he was doxxed. So, and this was a dad, a husband and a dad who lost his job. He was the sole supporter of a family. His wife was disabled. And that information was known because he had talked about that information previously. So these people don't care. When you get a crowd that's angry at someone's online behavior, at being disagreed with, at being, poked fun at, they don't care. If they wreck your life, they see that as equal.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. So the thing I want to get back to what it says in this article. So what she's trying to claim is that this what doxing actually is. But aside from the actual harassment part of it, with like where people are calling their home and like sending shit to their address and shit, what CNN is They haven't. What they're doing is actually very similar. They're using the fact that they have this man's information as a means to silence him by simply saying, "Well, we have the info. We could release it if he doesn't behave, if he doesn't stay in line."
Right.
That's basically what it comes down to. If he doesn't stay in line, we reserve the right to release his info. Which means they don't have to be the ones that call your house multiple times a day, and they don't have to be the ones that send shit to you or stalk you. All they put to do is put the information out there, and there are people who are, either big fans of CNN or they're very, very, anti-Trump, or or whatever, or just trolls that don't give a shit, and they'll fuck with this guy. So at its heart, they are threatening to dox. You are actually making the case that CNN is in fact doxing. So I don't know how Jess is coming up with this. Well, actually, it's not doxing bullshit. So,
what's funny too, though, is that she talks about the Gamergate playbook. I think was mentioned at one point.
Yeah. And
the funny thing about this is that she speaks about this is straight out of the Gamergate playbook, but this is, quite frankly, the irony is that this is right out of the mainstream media playbook to lie about things, to not research them, to misrepresent them, like they've done since the beginning of Gamergate. So this is just business as usual to them. There's nothing new here. They're using the same old dumb, stupid, dirty tricks that they've used since the beginning, and trying to demonize a group of people that were fighting for and continue to, in many regards, for the ethical standards that are supposed to be upheld by journalists, which CNN obviously doesn't fucking understand.
No.
And it's very telling about the way the news industry, because it is an industry. There's almost,
it's a job.
It's
a business.
It is. And this is this is something I've talked about various places, that this is the news industry, because of the 24-hour news cycle, has degraded to the point where they are beholden to advertisers or whoever it is that's, holding the purse strings. And you see shit like this because they have to fill 24 hours of space, fucking 365 days a year. They have to fucking fill airtime so that they don't have dead air. So you see this conjecturing and this bullshit and this lack where the standards that Hannah was talking about earlier, it's almost, I don't want to say it's the Hippocratic Oath, but it's very similar. It's like, do no harm. It's a very basic idea. But, those things, oh, well, maybe do no harm. Well, we got to fill up this spot. We've got an hour after lunch that needs to be filled up because of ratings. So maybe we'll relax a little bit on the guidelines. Maybe we can just claim freedom of press and we'll just get by on that. And so we see shit like this happening. And it's really kind of disgusting, frankly. It's really fucking disgusting.
Kick them when they're up, kick them when they're down. Kick them when they're up, kick them all around. Mike Cernovich, actually, he exposed a few things about Andrew Kaczynski, the writer of the threatening article, that are really kind of disturbing. I don't know if you guys remember the girl who ended up having to go into hiding because she made a joke about AIDS on her way to Africa, and by the time her plane landed, there was like an entire internet mob after her.
Yeah.
He's the one that basically sick to the internet on her. This may actually be the worst tweet of all time. Actually, the worst tweet. And then that's his comment and his retweet. And then, of course, BuzzFeed had an article about, internet erupts after PR woman for a media firm tweets a joke about getting AIDS in Africa. Yeah. And it was obviously manufactured news. He sacrificed this chick for a BuzzFeed story. And later on, he wrote that, I'm not sure I can pronounce this guy's last name right, but Sunil Tripathi, he's the Boston bomber who wasn't. This guy was missing. And he had ended up committing suicide. Now, what Cernovich wrote did not indicate that the guy committed suicide because of what Kaczynski wrote, but he still falsely labeled him in a news story the Boston bomber. And so his whole family's looking for him and everything, and they're dealing with that on top of everything. Then they find out he's committed suicide, and they're dealing with that on top of their grief. And this is typical of his journalistic style, apparently. He doesn't find out the facts before publishing something, takes things out of context, and irresponsibly sicks the internet on people who are completely innocent. Even if they weren't, it would still be wrong. But the fact that he's doing it to people that aren't even the correct targets for his writing, it's just this guy's an idiot. CNN really shouldn't be associating with this guy at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to mention Gawker but I think we should move on to the next article. The only thing I was going to say about it is that I'm reminded of, I saw this documentary on Netflix. I think it was what was it called? It was about the Hulk Hogan versus Gawker trial, and then it evolves somehow. There are some leaps of fucking logic in this. That it basically goes into this big freedom of the press thing, and billionaires are out to get us, and my First Amendment and all this shit. And the reason why I bring it up is because I'm reminded of how you were talking about this whole Hannah was talking about this idea of whether or not the information that a press outlet gets is actually something that is of interest to the public, and if it isn't, just destructive for whatever reason. And I'm reminded of when Gawker outed this guy. Do you remember? He's like the CEO of
of Reddit.
It wasn't Reddit. It was it? I don't think it was Reddit. I think it was he was a big CEO of something.
Oh, you're not talking about Violent Acres. You're talking about a different guy.
Nobody Speak, Trials of the Free Press. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're talking about he's the brother of the politician in the Obama administration.
Yeah.
Oh, God, what's his name?
Yeah.
And he outed him. He outed him out of the closet.
Yeah.
He basically took him out of the closet. Nick Denton did this, and his reasoning was that this guy shouldn't be in the closet because he
wasn't. That was Denton's thing. Because I'm out of the closet, so he shouldn't be in it.
So no gay men should live in the closet. They shouldn't be ready to essentially come out whenever they're ready. They have to do it when I say so. And so when he did that, this guy. It's gonna bother me because I did watch it and it was good. But he basically, this guy did not like that, which I can completely appreciate. Yeah. And he basically backed Hogan on the trial to make sure that Hogan won, or at least Peter Thiel.
Right, yeah, he was the other one because Peter Thiel was the billionaire that backed the trial, but Denton had outed the politician's brother though also. There were two different. Yeah,
but the guy who I was thinking about was Peter Thiel,
right?
Who is the CEO of? He's like a founder of a big
PayPal
website.
PayPal co-founder.
That's right.
PayPal co-founder.
That's right.
Yeah, and that was one. Now they're still trying to smear him. They're claiming he made money off of this and all kinds of stuff. People don't realize how expensive a court case can get. And the guy's independently wealthy. So why would he need to make money off of something like this?
He doesn't. I mean, clearly in Peter Thiel's case, he was basically like, you know what, I'm gonna help Hogan win because fuck Gawker. And that was basically it. That was his whole thing. And you know what? They actually point that out in the documentary. They say, well, I think he had something personal. And I was like, well, you don't fucking say.
You think?
What's wrong with that? If you guys are being assholes, then maybe you deserve what you get. He's like, well, I don't think you shouldn't be able to do stuff for personal reasons.
So Captain Obvious was running that documentary, in other words.
Yeah, my freedom of the press.
Yeah.
Well, Gawker, part of the reason that Hogan won his lawsuit was because he had made contact with the family of a young lady who was raped while she was passed out in a bar bathroom, and there was video of it. And Gawker, instead of contacting law enforcement or doing anything responsible, published it. The guy, the gal's father had actually contacted Gawker and begged them not to publish it, and they basically told him to fuck off and published it.
Oh,
and I mean,
right.
this is something.
The editor, AJ, what's his nuts, was just like, yeah, no, we're doing it. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Was the other guy.
This wasn't even somebody, like, she wasn't even very identifiable in the video. There was, it failed that test even worse than this doxing article does.
Yeah.
This was just a random person in a random bar somewhere that had something shitty happen to her. And like I said, getting a hold of that video, if it was what it looked like, if it really was what it looked like, the appropriate behavior is to contact law enforcement and turn the video over to them so they can start an investigation. But they published it instead. Heard her! Look at this chick! She's so drunk and she got raped in the bathroom. Heard her! That's journalism? That's respectable? I'm sorry, but Gawker really didn't have a leg to stand on after that. And I'm not surprised that he won with evidence like that this was their regular behavior. They couldn't very well turn around and say, well, no, we only did it this time because it was in the public interest. Because clearly that doesn't seem to matter to them. They do it anyway.
All right, so we better move on to the next story because we only did one story. I think we spent almost 45 minutes on it. So let's go on to the next one. I'll go ahead and read it. So, are we losing men to video games? An opinion article titled, "We're Losing a Whole Generation of Young Men to Video Games" was published in the New York Post last week. The author, Kyle Smith, claims that video games are becoming a substitute for living. He starts off reflecting on his own obsession with the game Civilization that made him waste a regretful amount of time managing his fake world. While he acknowledges that fear or real-life violence inspired by video games has been debunked and that surveys show men who play video games are happy, he argues that this is a fleeting happiness that does not consider the time sink factor. Quote from the article, "Men aged 21 to 30 work 12% fewer hours in 2015 than in the year 2000. The percentage of young men who worked 0 weeks over the course of a year doubled in that period to an alarming 15%. Those working hours were largely replaced by gaming, and fully 35% of young men now live with their parents or other close relatives, up from 23% in 2000. Their unemployment rate jumped by 10%. End quote. Smith strengthens his case, pointing out that mastering video games takes away the ability to gain mastery in a career, and that many who will be at a disadvantage later in life, rippling out beyond career but into relationships as women desire to marry up. Although Smith claims men are dropping out of the workforce to play video games, it seems like a stretch to assume that video games are the cause when they are most likely a result or symptom of a greater opting out event. There is some validity to video games leading to less mastery in the real world and more leveling up in the gaming world. However, there are more reasons why a man might focus on video games than just being addicted.
Oh boy.
Scott, I know you want to go ahead and say some stuff.
Oh boy.
I have stuff too, but you go first.
Thank you. Okay, when you read this article, when I found this article, I was like, wow, this guy is projecting like fucking crazy.
I ruined my life. It's everyone's problem.
Yeah. Oh my god, this whole article is a fucking mess. This guy is like, he's like, holy shit, man, I fucked up, and so everybody must be as fucking retarded as I am. And there's a lot of stuff this person doesn't consider in this, which I find, I hate to say it, but I find it problematic. But he makes some assertions that this and this and this should be the reason that this is happening, and part of the thing he doesn't consider is that and I'm going to speak from my own personal experience here. When the job market crashed and all this sort of bad stuff started happening, I couldn't find work. I was out of work for and currently I'm out of work. So just truth be told, but when I didn't have a job, I turned to video games. Well, I mean, I was always a gamer, but I turned more to video games because I didn't have anything to do. And it gave me the ability where I could actually be social with friends of mine that lived across the country that I didn't get to see anymore, friends that I had gone to school with, friends that had moved away. So for me, it was a way to maintain, a social, quote unquote, social life, as it were, and still have some fun with friends. And it wasn't about just being addicted to gaming. It was about, there wasn't fuck all else to do. It's like, so what am I going to do? Sit around with my thumb in my ass all day, or am I going to try and do something positive? I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to interact with folks.
Sure.
I'm going to, these are the great aspects of gaming that he totally neglects in this. In his, he's talking about Civilization. That is a single player game. It is something that is not interactive with other people generally. And so he's conflating these two very different things, and there's just so many leaps in logic here that it's kind of frustrating when you read stuff like this, because he doesn't really consider that there's a lot of other things going on, like that there's a workforce that's diminished because there just aren't jobs. There are people that actually enjoy this stuff. It does give them a social outlet so that they don't become these isolated, angry, whatever it is that he's presupposing that these people are doing this for. And
what's another thing is that, like, but aside from what you were talking about, we're in a shitty economy. That's just started. Maybe, hopefully, we'll be turning around. I don't even know. We have problems with men's. If his argument is to say that there is an increasing problem with men's failure to launch, video games are not the cause. No. Video games are simply a symptom or a side effect of it. If there was an issue with men failure to launch, as in where he's saying more men are staying at home, well, actually more kids are staying at home. Women are also staying at home longer. Right. But the difference is that when a woman either can't get out of her parents' house, we don't judge her the same way.
Right.
Their value is not actually tied to how long they're stuck at home. Whereas with men, we have expectations. So naturally, people are going to pay more attention to that.
Right.
Playing video games is not the cause of these things. It's just a symptom of this. Another thing is you have to consider that, despite the fact that we're not in the best economy right now, we do have a problem with unemployment in general. I think it was like there were some record numbers, for a while there. We also have problems where essentially men are not being very well prepared for the job market, for the future, because we have an academic system that doesn't actually take their best interests into heart and doesn't educate them in the way that is best for them. I mean, men are not doing well in school, right, compared to women, and they're not getting into college as often, and they're not, and then, like, we complain at them because they're the ones that are having trouble finding work or finding their place or developing their career, and yet we haven't prepared them, to actually be able to go out and do that stuff.
Yeah, regardless of being prepared, there aren't jobs. There's not the infrastructure out there to facilitate.
And there isn't a lot of incentive. Right, and there isn't a lot of incentive to get them to go out and get that stuff.
Well, you know what?
And of course, this is also making women unhappy too, because they are looking to marry up. They are hypergamous by nature, and they may not know it, but it does have an effect on their their choices and their opinions in men. And so you have women looking to see where the good men are at, and of course the men are ill-equipped to be those people. And so this is just like fucked up all around.
You know what I'm seeing in this?
Gaming doesn't have much to do with it.
You know what I'm seeing in this is this is an article length demand that men's priorities not change again. This is like I will relate this back to the changes that feminism brought about, or at least that feminism claims to have brought about, because when you really trace it back, a lot of it had nothing to do with feminism. It was more the labor movement and simply the way things changed socially over time during the 20th century. But feminists pushed for women to get out of the roles that women traditionally lived in at the earlier part of the 20th century. Feminists pushed for women to get out of those roles. They pushed for men to stay in them. And this is another example of men being pushed to stay in that role of being the provider, being driven, measuring himself by his achievements in the workplace, not valuing his leisure time at all, not having a right to have his own leisure time, not having a right to marry equally. I mean, who really says women have the right to marry up? So this is a situation where this is just a guy lamenting that men are not as utilitarian these days as they used to be. And men are not. This is a crack the whip, right? Men are not towing the line, and at some point, society needs somebody to do that. Men are not in the service position that they were before, and in the numbers that this guy expected to see. He's not seeing what Generation Y, the millennial generation, step up and shovel shit like the past generations did. Maybe it's because some of them have woken up to the fact that men get used and used and used and never anymore get any kudos for it. Because it's become passé, I guess you could say, to be grateful that there are men that go out and muck out the sewers. It's out of fashion to be grateful for the men who work on the power lines. Nobody cares anymore even about the men who go overseas, and as far as their government tells them, whether you agree with it or not, are fighting for the freedom of the folks back home. It's gotten to the point where people will get upset if you value that sacrifice at all. And I'm not surprised that there are men who are starting to look for more of a work-life balance. I'm not surprised that there are men who are holding out for a good job instead of going to work at McDonald's. I'm not surprised that any of this stuff is happening. They're starting to wake up to the fact they're human beings, and hell, women are allowed to do that. Why aren't they?
Yep. Another funny aspect of this too is that if we're talking about gaming over the last 3 to 4 years, a common thread that is constantly pushed among the feminists and that sort of side of the argument, as it were, is that 50% of women are gamers. 50% of women are gamers. 50% of women are gamers, Brian. They're being forced out of the workplace too. Oh wait, no, they're not. There's no mention of that. Wait, because
or
there's
they
a
say women are.
here,
they'll even say women are the majority of gamers too.
Yeah, they'll say that too.
They're 65% of women are gamers.
Are you mean
Candy Crush?
You mean 65% of gamers are women?
Yeah, 65% of gamers.
Are
women.
That's what I thought, that they're claiming we're a higher percentage of the games community, and then they count Candy Crush. I still say my favorite version of Candy Crush was the YouTube video that went around Facebook with the guy that put runts on a stump and smashed him with a hammer.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, going back to what Scott was saying.
But that talking point is inconvenient to this guy's argument. It's so it's just kind of funny the points that this guy is picking and choosing. And I said
he's
earlier,
not looking, but you can't. That's why I know that he's wrong about this, because he's not actually looking at the situation for women.
Right.
He's looking at his anecdote,
exactly.
Well,
his personal lived experience, and then he's looking at some data regarding unemployment rates and
there's another factor. I was going to say there's another factor that, with respect to the unemployment rates, and this is something that I saw is a very stark divide actually. When my husband and I first moved to the Dayton metro area, it was at the beginning of the recession in this area, and during the next couple of years, there were 5 factories that shut down in this area. I had no trouble finding. It was shit jobs, but I found jobs. My husband had to fight tooth and nail to get anything, and he had a better work history than I did. And he was much more flexible in his availability. He had, if you didn't count his sex versus my sex, everything else about us, he was much more employable than I was. I got the jobs because employers have incentives to hire women that outweigh all of those other things. Mm-hmm. So where he's talking about unemployment with respect to guys, we may be seeing a situation where the recession is going to maybe lift a lot faster for women than it does for men, because men are discriminated against by federal law in the workplace.
Well, that's an interesting wrinkle. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, but this whole article though, this is when you read it. This guy's projecting very, very hard, and like you said, it's his personal anecdote that he's fallen in love with the idea. He loves the smell of his own farts, and he wants to tell everybody about it.
I mean, I think there are real cases where there are men who they get into any kind of hobby or interest as a means of essentially distracting themselves from the problems they're facing in the real world.
For sure.
And it's sort of a way of isolating them. But they don't just do it with video games. They do it with movies. They do it with drugs. They do it with alcohol. They do it with gambling. They do it with porn. They do it a combination of those things. Whatever. Okay? Those men do need compassion and they need help. But this article is not a good example of that. So this is sort of like me doing a not all, but I want to be clear about it because we have, as our involvement with the MRM is concerned, there are a lot of really smart people who have written about this. Warren Farrell has talked about game addiction, and there's another guy, I can't remember his name, but he talks about porn addiction. I want to get him on as a guest pretty soon. So these are real things that we could discuss, but it's to blame this on some kind of like male role that's not being filled by men that should be, or something, essentially making it this broad brush that this guy's painting with, instead of simply looking inward and saying, okay, why did I do this? Because the reason why I'm upset is because I fucked up. And you got to take responsibility, and it's about a way of taking responsibility that's constructive for yourself, rather than saying, well, let's just say it's all men that are going through this, and it's all their faults, and they all need to man up and step up and all that. Oh, maybe we could look at why this is happening to them. We need to maybe see what their issue is, what they need help with, because there are men that need help, and I want to see them get that help, but it's got to be done in a way that's less. I don't know, whatever the fuck Kyle's doing, like with his head up his own ass,
Yeah, I think this is
clean his room.
This is a lot like the situation with attention deficit disorder, where there is an attention deficit disorder that exists. It happens to some people, and there are people who experience it, and that doesn't necessarily make all kids in school that the teacher has a rough time with attention deficit disorder cases. But back in the 90s, you could go into a classroom and like 3/4 of the boys and half the girls would be on Ritalin for attention deficit disorder, because it was very easy for schools to use that as a default. Well, we'll just portray or present ordinary behavior that we don't like as if it's pathological. And that's what this guy is doing as well, I think, to a degree. There are situations where there are people who face addiction, and there are situations where there are people who maybe value their free time, their leisure time, more than he thinks is appropriate for a man. There are people who are taking their time getting into the workforce because they're holding out for the type of job they want. There are people living with mom and dad while they get their doctorate, which is perfectly okay. It keeps you from running up so many bills. And all of these different things are getting lumped into the idea of video game addiction eating a generation of guys. That's bullshit.
Yeah. Agreed. All right, let's move on to the next story. Scott, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Woo-hoo.
Tell us about male bus drivers wearing skirts to deal with the heat.
Oh, is it hot in here? Is it just me? All right, everybody. All right. Sorry, I went a little bit too big. Apologies. Let me scale it back a little bit. For bus drivers in French city of Nantes, they have
Nantes.
been... Nantes?
It's just Nantes.
Is it Nantes? Okay.
It's just Nantes.
They have been dealing with extremely hot buses. Temperatures have been reaching 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius, and up to 120 Fahrenheit, 50 degrees Celsius, behind the windshields, according to Healthline.com. High environmental temperatures can be dangerous to your body. In the range of 90 degrees and 105 degrees, you can experience heat cramps and exhaustion. Between 105 and 130, heat exhaustion is more likely. You should limit your activities at this range. An environmental temperature over 130 often leads to heat stroke. The dress code for the bus company forbids the wearing of shorts. However, shorts are allowed to be worn. Wait,
skirts.
Oh, sorry. I'm terrible tonight. The previous year, the company changed its uniform to include summer trousers. However, that did not include the addition of shorts to the list of approved attire. Needless to say, those changes did little to help men's working conditions. So what do men do? They showed up they showed up through their bus shifts in skirts. One of the drivers said after wearing a skirt for the day, I can tell you that with oh God, I'm just the worst. I can tell you that with today's temperatures, it was rather agreeable. This isn't the first time men, or for that fact boys, have resorted to wearing skirts to combat heat waves. In 2013, male bus drivers in Sweden also wore skirts during their shifts. In June of 2017, a group of British schoolboys wore skirts in defiance of a no-shorts dress code. Are we on the track for entries to relax dress codes in cases of extreme heat, or will more and more men resort to wearing skirts to handle the heat?
Have these people never heard of utility-kilts?
Saying, right?
To be honest, just from a perspective of regularly wearing both, in that type of temperature range, it's actually better to wear skirts than shorts, because shorts will still cover up the areas that your body loses heat if it's exposed to the air, and your sweat is exposed to the air. So you kind of need that heat exchange. The inner thighs there, having them covered up, it's better if they're not. And heat
you gotta air out that ball.
Yeah. And heat exhaustion is no joke, man. It sucks. I've had it. It sucks. It's scary, and at the time that it's happening to you, you're not really alert enough to realize how much danger you're in, and unless somebody else notices, it does. Holy shit, it does. And unless somebody else notices what happens, and when it happened to me, my boss drove me home, deposited me on my front stoop, and left. And I went inside and slept for like almost 24 hours. She's really lucky I didn't die, and the doctor said so. So honestly, it would be to an employer's advantage to relax the dress codes. But for Pete's sake, utility kilts, I wouldn't mind seeing those come back into fashion, actually.
Yeah, but this guy in the sunglasses looks good in that denim number. I don't know. I mean, I'm saying if you can pull it off,
right?
Just do it. If you can pull it off, just do it.
Hey,
Besides,
pulling it
so
off is sexual harassment.
Oh.
See, I've been refraining from saying, that I wouldn't mind fashion making it easy. one more way for men to show off their legs. That'd be a cool thing.
Yeah.
But no, you had to go there with pulling it off. Jeez.
Yeah, you're right. Although I wouldn't, these guys, their skirts are a little bit on the tighter side. I would wear something a little bit airy and open, so that you get like some wind blowing through and
there
you
you
get a
go.
nice breeze. I mean, because but seriously though, 120 degrees. Fuck that, man. I will wear a banana hammock if it'll make me feel better. But since I can't wear that as a bus driver, which I understand, then yeah, I would totally wear a kilt or a skirt or something.
Yeah, it would be good.
Yeah,
they should give them
a lot of
fans,
times,
air conditioning or something.
Yeah, I'd put one right between my legs.
Be careful with that, okay?
I have yeah, I know, right? I did buy this little USB powered, it looks like a mini fan, like the normal, sort of old school,
Like a box fan kind of thing.
Yeah, not a box fan, but like those ones that stand up and they oscillate. They move back.
I was gonna say, if a girl wears it down there, then it's a box fan.
Right.
Oh,
Hey-oh.
I see what you did there, Hannah.
No, see, what you need to do is you go to like the Halloween store and you find one of those clown costumes that has the fan on the inside that blows the costume so that it's really huge, and you just put that under the skirt.
Yeah,
oh yeah, like a Marilyn Monroe thing,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Or those little portable ones that look like a sumo wrestler. Have you ever seen those?
Yeah.
Like a little sumo wrestler fan. Yeah. So, but no, I mean, I just thought this was a funny article. I mean, if you know what, I think it's really stupid that they would not allow shorts but allow skirts, and I think that these guys putting on skirts to make themselves, essentially able to do their job without having to go to the fucking hospital because of the heat.
Right.
I say go for it, guys. That's it. I mean, maybe they'll change the policy to let guys wear shorts, because I think even though shorts are still less airy than skirts are, I think men are perfectly happy wearing shorts if that's what they want to wear. and maybe, you know, like, because I bet if they did the opposite, if they basically said, okay, no skirts or shorts, that shit there will be hell or high water to pay. There will be politicians lobbying against it. There will be fundraisers. There will be charities. Al Jazeera Plus will make a video about it. You'll read on it.
I can tell you what
Guardian.
it would take.
It would just it'd be insane.
I can tell you exactly what it would take for them to be able to ban skirts. They would have to be able to say there was a safety issue with the skirts. You know, and that's what they did with my workplace, where it used to get up around 120 in my kitchen on occasion when the air conditioning failed in the store, and that's because they turned a storeroom into a kitchen. It was really not a good situation. But that was one of the things. They made me switch to pants. No shorts, had to be long pants, had to be black pants or khakis, and so it wasn't even pants that could be relatively cool. It was actually, you know, heat sink pants that where you'd be warmer because you were wearing those pants. And the reason that they gave why I could not wear a skirt to work was that it could get caught in the equipment, or that it could get caught on the ladder I had to go up and down to get cigarettes and stuff. So I was not allowed to have one. And there was no fighting it because they did say it was a safety issue. I would have imagined that it would be something that could be fought in an environment where there's heat like that, and the employee can prove that it makes a difference in body temperature, and there is no safety issue.
I wonder if they.
On the plus side, the guys the guys in Sweden that were also wearing skirts could probably use them to get into concerts now.
Hey-o.
Yeah, but they gotta watch out because they get the attention of the immigrants.
Yeah, right.
You know, I wonder if they've
ahead, Scott.
if they've considered, like, it seems like a very easy solution or something to mitigate some of the problem is like tinting the windows on the front of the buses. I mean, it's not a cure-all, but when you tint something,
a great
it
idea.
Helps a lot. It can change.
Absolutely.
The temperature difference can be astronomically, like,
well,
reduced.
yeah, or getting like really good air conditioners in there.
Yeah.
They can also do that.
See, that's the problem though too, is that you're in a bus and the doors are constantly opening, so trying to maintain that is probably
so the heat
difficult.
comes in.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess we have to see if they have. Maybe they already have tinted windows. They probably should.
I would hope.
I know that
so,
the buses.
yeah.
Well, the buses here don't. So,
Yeah, the buses here don't either.
Yeah, I don't think they normally do, but that's certainly something they should consider, and it costs fucking nothing probably.
Yeah, the cost is negligible. We have a problem with house heat, like direct sunlight coming in through the windows on the front of the house. Like, it's basically as long as the sun's up, it's coming in through the windows. And so what we did, we got this mirrored window tint that you can buy at Home Depot. And there's like if you stand in front of the window when the sun's coming in and you don't have that on there, it's like it's blazing hot. It's like, you know, you're standing in a fucking oven. And when we put this stuff up there, it's like there's like probably a good 20 to 30 degree difference in the temperature that's coming through that window now. So it's like it is an incredible difference. So like it just seems like such an easy solution here. It's like, come on, man, please, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Or shorts.
All
or
right.
Let them wear shorts. I mean, that's another thing, you know, another component. But yeah.
Yeah, or just let them wear shorts. Or do both.
Why not both?
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not both?
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the final story. New South Park goes back to formula. Co-creator of South Park, Trey Parker, says the show will avoid bashing Trump and get back to its roots. He told the Washington Post, "We fell into the same trap that Saturday Night Live fell into, where it was like, dude, we're just becoming CNN now. We're becoming tune in to see what we're going to say about Trump this week. Matt and I hated it, but we got stuck into it somehow." Although he thinks that by satirizing current events, especially Trump, they could get higher ratings, he doesn't care for it and wants to get back to kids being kids and being ridiculous and outrageous and essentially Cartman fucking with Butters dressed as a robot, shit like that. He is not intentionally funny, but he is intentionally using comedic art to propel himself, he said, on Trump. The things that we do, being outrageous and taking things to the extreme to get a reaction out of people, he's using the same tools. At his rallies, he gets people laughing and whooping. I don't think he's that good at it, but it obviously sells. It made him president. So it's really short article, and the reason why I chose this one, I just wanted to say, is because people, but ever since the season of the PC Principal, people have been watching South Park to find out if they're going to talk about stuff that's going on. Usually, they have an interest in what's going on with, you know, with them going after regressives or just like talking about current events. They find that to be really interesting. But it looks like they don't have an interest in that, and it looks like they're going to be going back to just talking about, I guess, you know, kids being kids, which I personally don't have a problem with. I think that this you can't really. It's probably smart for them not to do it, even though they're sure that they'd get really great ratings if they did, because I think from a long-term creative standpoint, they probably have more fun with it, and they give us original material. I think that this whole thing is it's really getting old really fast. And so, in my opinion, I think if the South Park guys could try new stuff, people might flock to them just to be exposed to something different.
Yeah. Yeah, because, you know, everybody's doing it. Like, they make a very cogent point in that, you know, they don't want to become CNN. You know, all these, you know, again, quote-unquote news organizations are beating this stuff into the ground on a 24-hour news cycle. So what's the point in highlighting it more? Because you're not really bringing anything you're not really exercising your, you know, comedic chops by bringing to focus the absurdity of what's going on, because it is always there. It's like, okay, yeah, hey, we're showing you this thing. Oh yeah, no, we know, we've seen it already. We see it every night.
Well, it's
on
almost
the news,
like
you know?
The thing is that it's almost like you have, not only do you have news outlets like CNN and other mainstream meteor people, but also independent media people, and they're all focusing on everything that this guy is doing, and, like, you know, in the administration, no matter how petty, every time he tweets, it turns into a shitstorm online. And then you have people that are satirizing them, that are satirizing the media themselves, and we are among those people. And so it is getting to the point where it's a bit oversaturated.
Yeah.
It's quite oversaturated, and it's probably better for these guys to just do their own thing, because if they do comment on it, they're going to have to do it in a new way, and I think it's going to be really difficult, considering there's a lot of people that are doing it really well already. In fact, the thing about last season of South Park is, to be quite honest, all the stuff dealing with the election, I didn't think they were into it, because it wasn't as funny to me as the stuff from the season before.
Right, it wasn't.
Does that make sense?
Compelling.
Well,
Yeah,
it seemed to me
it wasn't.
like it was appropriate for them to have the continuation of the giant douche turd sandwich joke. That fit. It fits. It's probably going to always fit. It's just true of elections. People go into politics in some instances, you know, because they're mad. People go into politics more often because they're really not good for anything else. And so it's always going to be, I hate to say that, but it's so true.
It's true. It's true.
And it's always going to be, in the long run, a choice, like they said, between a turd sandwich and a giant douche. There's always going to be one or the other. And so, I mean, that was good. And there were things for them to point out that other people weren't pointing out. There were things for them to ridicule. There were things for them to parody, and that was all great. But they have their shtick. They already have their thing that they do. And it's the thing that made them big. It's the thing that made them popular. It's the thing that made them famous. And they're not going to be able to do it with this, because it's already doing it to itself. American politics has become a parody of itself. And it's gotten to a point now where you can't really make things more ridiculous than they already are for the purposes of pointing them out. There's not another step more ridiculous for them to go without completely losing function. And so I think for what they do, because entertainment, like television entertainment and stuff like that, to a degree it's, you know, a chance to laugh at the real world and everything, but a lot of it is also an escape from current events and current problems and current arguments and current conflict and so on. And that would give them a bit of a leg up, I think, on everyone else, if they're the only ones providing that, because everyone else is focused on the president.
No, something else too to think about is that they've got literally 4 years to do this if they ever want to go back to it. This is just starting. It's not going away. So if they ever want to go and like try and focus on some of the absurdity of it, that's fine. They got time. But like kind of what Hannah was saying, it's like you can't write this stuff. It is so fucking absurd. It is so fucking crazy. You literally can't write this stuff. The reality is stranger than the what is it? Stranger than fiction or
yeah, reality is stranger than fiction. That's just it. Like what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
like
how
you
do
might
you
as well
top
just
this?
you just let it play out, man.
Yeah.
Just like just let's just let's sit back and watch the next 4 years because we don't need TV anymore. We almost like it's like these guys have to go back and do the fucking awesome shit and like their old stuff because the commenting on current events to try to make it funny is unnecessary because it's going to be funny. Especially just watching the mainstream media react to shit. And they're the funniest motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Right. And
well, hell, the meme stuff. They've already done that one. Right. They already had a show on the dangers of memes, mocking the freakouts over memes. That was before. Now it's happening in real life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Another thing too is that when you're this kind of the temperature of the environment, of the political landscape and all this kind of stuff. I have to imagine that, like, for me, because I kind of unplugged from it almost completely, except when we're doing stories on here, honestly, because it's like, it's so fucking depressing. It's such a downer. Like, that I seldom see the humor in it anymore because, like we said, it's stranger than fiction. And so I have to imagine when you're trying to be, well, I don't have to imagine because as somebody who is, does creative endeavors, it's like, some of this stuff is just so demoralizing and so depressing that you want to stay away from it. You want to do something new. You want to do something different. You want to do something fun. And, Southpark is fun. It's different. It's it can be, they can tackle some real world things from time to time and do it, very deftly with a very deft hand. But like, I can imagine being like, man, fuck this. Let's just make stupid shit about kids farting on fucking other people's heads and them getting pink eye or fucking something like that, whatever it is. And I kind of appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that they're kind of stepping away from it because they've got, like I said, they've got time. They've got 4 years to do this if they ever want to go back to it. But like, I appreciate the idea that they want to have fun. They want to make something creative and interesting and silly and whatever, and maybe not get bogged down in all the political bullshit. So yeah, more power to them, man. I mean, as creators, they can obviously do whatever the fuck they want. They've put themselves in a position. It's kind of like with Notch and the fuck you money kind of thing scenario where it's like, oh, I'll come on Twitter and say whatever the fuck I want. They're very much in that same kind of position. They have
absolutely,
so yeah, fucking. I hope they do some fun stuff, man.
Yeah. No, me too. I mean, again, you know what? Do you guys? I'm sure it'll be fun no matter what. You're gonna do well. Yeah. Southpark is gonna be just fine. So there's nothing to worry about here. Yeah. But I thought I would let you guys know in case there were people that were watching us that were thinking, oh shit, what's the next season gonna be like? Are they gonna continue, on the same sort of path? No, it appears not. Although you never know because if something crazy enough happens, and it doesn't have to necessarily involve like the president. It could be some crazy Antifa shit or some crazy university shit. Or whatever, they'll probably have something to say if they find it interesting enough. But I think what their main thing is, they want to avoid getting on the anti-Trump bash train because that's just like a horse that is way beyond dead, resurrected,
it's low-hanging
resurrected, fruit. And I mean it's not even hanging. It's like fucking rotting on the ground under the tree with flies all over it, and there's still people like picking through it for nuggets. So it's probably better that these guys don't do that. Anyway, it's time for us to close the show, but we are going to be doing the after show. It will also be pre-recorded. I know that sounds weird, but I don't know how else to do it. So if you are interested in joining us in the after show, please consider becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio.